the key to having out-of-body experiences is in the repetition, in the practice, in the experience. You realize, okay, I have my physical body, I have my physical life, my physical education, my physical culture. But here I am realizing that I am much more than that. What am I beyond that? And the out-of-body experience allows you to explore much further really who you are. And that also enhances your understanding, right, of yourself, of life. And furthermore, I also realized that because this essence is somehow independent of the physical body, I also realize it continues existing after the physical body disappears, and it existed before the physical body was created.
Welcome back to a show dedicated to exploring the psychedelic space and the mysteries that expand our consciousness. Today we're diving deep into the fascinating topic of out-of-body experiences. Out-of-body experiences have been reported all over the world for thousands of years. These are extraordinary experiences where subjectively people separate from their physical body and can perceive the world from an expanded or elevated state. What do these extraordinary out-of-body experiences have to reveal to us about the nature of mind and consciousness and the cosmos? My name is Jonas, and today I have the huge pleasure and the honor of speaking with Luis Minero, who's a leading expert in the field of out-of-body experiences. He wrote a fascinating and compelling book called Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience. And he's been researching this topic since the early 1990s after he spontaneously started having out-of-body experiences as a young adult. And over the past few decades, he's also spent a lot of time teaching thousands of people how to have these experiences for themselves. He has some amazing insights to share. And if it is true that there's some kind of legitimacy or reality to these out-of-body experiences in a way that we don't yet understand, that could change life on Earth as we know it. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Let's get started. Luis Minero, welcome. It really is a joy to connect with you here today.
Thank you, Jonas, and the pleasure is mine, really.
Really kind of am in awe of your work. There's a truly groundbreaking quality to a lot of what you discuss and a lot of what you share. You've discussed in previous interviews and conversations kind of around the age of 12, sort of spontaneously having your first out-of-body experience or your first series of out-of-body experiences. For those new to your work, can you touch on just a little bit as to how this all started for you and what it was like?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. The first one happened when I was 12, 12 and a half, I must have been more or less, December. December. And really it happened, first of all, involuntarily, in the sense that I wasn't trying to induce it, because at that time I didn't know, I just simply didn't know about out-of-body experiences. I just simply woke up in the middle of the afternoon, or I regained awareness and I was already outside my body. On that opportunity, I don't know if I should, give the whole context, and maybe I should. Way back when I was 12, my father had bought me a computer. But the way computers were back then, and now I'm going to show my age, because at that time it was an Atari computer. So it wasn't the console, the game console, but it was actually a computer that just simply ran BASIC, which is a language that nobody uses now. So we're talking, mid 80s. And then what happened is that I had this habit of coming from school, playing around with it a little bit, programming something, and little things that kids would do. I was 12, and I was really having a problem trying to program a specific little game that I wanted to do. And then I felt sleepy and I went to lie down in my bed, and I probably kept in my mind, that whatever it was that I was working on. And that more intellectual activity sort of like I like to think, prompt me to regain the awareness in the middle of the afternoon. And then I was again staring at my monitor with my hands in sort of like in the keyboard, like ready to program. But I was still very much into what I was trying to figure out until it all of a sudden it dawned on me, like, wasn't I sleepy? Didn't I go to take a nap? And that's when I sort of like turned around because the computer was in my bedroom and I saw my body. And that sort of like surprised me. It gave me a little bit of a shock. And I immediately went into my body and woke up and, sort of like it really wasn't scared at all, but I was confused. I remember
Mm.
I was thinking I was over there, but I was here, but I was there. And I really didn't understand what was the difference between my physical body and me that was thinking. I just didn't know that distinction. So that was my first OBE. And actually, just a little bit after that, probably somebody called me to go play soccer, and I just, completely put the experience out of my mind.
Yeah.
And after that, I also started to have others, but they weren't that frequent. They were maybe every 6 months or sometimes a couple of years would go by. And I really didn't know how to induce them. So at the beginning, they were just involuntary, spontaneous. I didn't know that there was a name to them. And it was until much later that I started to read books and, I realized, oh, some people call it astral travel. And then I got a little bit more into it and started, training techniques and, developing a little bit more the capacity and trying to induce them.
So could you describe just some of the what a out of body experience might entail, like some of the core features of that?
Yeah, sure. I would say for most people, and maybe a little bit similar to what I was describing here with regards to my first OBE, some of the first times that people have out of body experience, you normally regain the awareness outside your body and you are floating close to your bedroom, so to speak. And I would say for most people, when it happens the first time, it is probably spontaneous as well. Something prompts it, something that you were either doing during the day. In my case, it just happened to be some intellectual activity, but for other people and for students that I have, heard and seen that, that when they had their OBEs, sometimes it was something that it was new, like a relative that had just arrived, or even something that had inspired them, or an
Mm.
idea, or even sometimes a lecture from a college professor that really left them thinking, and that sort of like prompted the recovery of the awareness outside the body. So the first thing is that you usually feel that you're floating, you're just floating in the air. Most of the times, I would say most people don't see their physical body on their first OBEs just because they don't they don't think to look back, and to look at the physical body, right? But they usually describe how they're floating close to the ceiling or close to a wall, or maybe they even regain awareness because they feel that they're going through a wall, and now they find themselves floating in the kitchen of their house, of their apartment, etc. Usually at the beginning, the awareness that we have recovered tends to be a little bit fragile. So any little thing that surprises us or that startled us, and by that I don't mean again nothing negative. No, just a simple fact that we are outside the body and now we're using, for example, a different type of vision. So everything looks different. Some colors look a lot more vivid. You are able to see sort of like the energetic outline, like the aura of objects, of different things, even things that are alive, for example, like a plant that you have in the table of your kitchen, now that you're seeing it, because a plant is not a rock, but it's something that is alive, you're able to see the aura, the energies that it emanates. And then that sometimes just simply surprises people when they are in their first out of body experiences and you come into your body. And of course, that's how the learning goes. Now you're reflecting inside your body. Okay, I saw the plant, the aura surprised me. Now I'm not going to let that happen because, a plant in my table in my kitchen shouldn't stop me. But now I know how it looks. So the next time you go a step further and a step further until you start, dealing with more advanced things like, traveling longer distances a little bit faster, or maybe realizing that sometimes you're ending up in a different dimension that is not the physical reality per se, but it's just simply a different frequency, as people like to call it. And then little by little, you start to understand a little bit more of the non-physical environment.
Mhm, mhm. My understanding is that typically these out-of-body experiences, when they spontaneously happen, are somewhere in between like the waking and the sleeping state. Something about that transition creates
Yes,
this opportunity.
yes, that's right. And to be a little bit more, um, yes, it happens when you're falling asleep in what is called hypnagogy, or that in between state as you're falling asleep, or also when you're waking up in the morning. And they're even, knowing that it tends to happen a little bit more often, or it's easier to recover the awareness during those two states. There are different techniques centered around, those two states, of trying to regain the awareness the moment that you're waking up, for example, so as to, have an out-of-body experience since your physical body is still fairly relaxed.
Right. Yeah, and a little later in the interview, I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about some of the techniques as to how to actually induce or access one of these experiences.
Sure.
I'm wondering, I myself have attempted to have out of body experiences. I've never myself had one. I'm curious, like, about kind of the subjective quality of the experience. You're leaving your body, you find yourself outside of the body emotionally and perceptually. What is this like? I mean, it strikes me that this is a kind of a dramatically expanded state of consciousness. Emotionally, what is it like? And perceptually, what is an out of body experience? How would you describe that?
Right, right. And let me, so there's a few things there, a few layers to your question. So it's a very good question. It made me think already of several things there. The first thing I think that is good to touch on is on the idea of the level of awareness, or that we have an expanded level of awareness, which you're correct. Many times outside your body, you have an expanded level of awareness, and that is going to affect your level of perception, which is part of the question, and as well how much you're able to benefit from it, and how much you're able to absorb and digest, and reach very meaningful conclusions about many things, life, what am I doing here, etc. So many times it is like that. But it's also important to say, and I think many of the viewers, probably in their first out of body experiences, they might have noticed that their level of awareness is not as expanded. And sometimes it might not even be the level of awareness that we have right now while we are awake physically. That we could consider this our baseline, so to speak, right? But sometimes the level of awareness, especially at the beginning, might even be a little bit lower. And then it feels
Mm,
dreamlike. And this is
mm,
even why many people actually confuse them with some very vivid dreams. Sometimes when we don't even know the word out of body experience, we have the tendency to say, look, I had a very vivid dream. I think that it was something more than a dream, but they still don't have the word, right? So in those sort of out of body experiences that unfortunately they're still the most common. Um, the Sometimes we have the out of body experience, and even the recollection coming back is affected. So the level of perception is affected, is less, and coming back also the whatchamacallit, the recollection is also affected. So, and those of course have a lower impact on individuals, of course. And then it is easier for people just to put them out of their mind and keep they keep on going with their life. So I say all of this because maybe many people who are listening to us or watching us, they might recognize those. And then when they happen to you, don't just simply keep on going with your life. But if you have already had something that you think, that it might be an out-of-body experience, invest in it because, a lot of benefits can come from that. Now, when you have a greater level of awareness, yes, your perceptions are also enhanced. In the perceptions outside the body, let me see if I can simplify here a little bit. First of all, it's not just that we have vision and hearing and a sense of taste and of smell. It's not the five senses that we are used to with the physical body, but it's almost as if our intuition or our perception of the energetic fields of the vibes around, becomes enhanced, and then you're pulling a lot more information from the surrounding area, for whatever it is that you're focused on. And then we have the tendency at the beginning, as we are perceiving the everything that is around us, we have the tendency to classify it into vision and hearing and smell and taste simply because we're used to the physical body. We're used to the physical body having these channels of perception. But outside the body, things are a lot richer, and you can pull a lot more information from the environment, from the energetic fields, much more than with the physical body. So that, first of all, that is eye-opening. You realize that when people inside the body say they have a psychism and they're able to, read the intention of somebody else or something like that, or get at least an idea of that, you realize that outside the body, the astral body or the non-physical body, has that capacity if you have a greater level of awareness. And in essence, I would venture to say that the people who inside the body have that intuition a little bit more developed, it is really because they're using some of the abilities of their non-physical body while they are inside the body. And that's why they're able, to capture a few things, right? Even inside the body. So that is also something that you develop. Even the out-of-body experiences, as you have them a little bit more and more, you start to bring some of those abilities of the non-physical body and use them a little bit more, inside the body. So you, in essence, become a little bit more psychic. This is part of what happens. And I don't mean to say this happens with one OBE or two, but it's a process. It's almost like going to the gym, right? We go to the gym a couple of times and we are not yet competing in the Olympics or running a marathon, but it's a process. But obviously, if you enjoy doing exercise and you keep on running, sure, you start running some marathons maybe, or at least 10Ks or things like that. So yes, your perception, increases. You realize that sort of like this internal monologue that many times we have, that inside the body, it might be sort of like, like we are estimating or trying to guess maybe things that other people, the intentions that other people are having, right? So we see it many times in relationships or with friends. That we are thinking, did he just say this because of ABCD? Is he thinking about that time that we did ABCD? Or is she now complaining about this because the other day I said this, And we are sort of like trying, to understand the other person. Nothing wrong with that. But when we are outside the body, that process of the internal monologue is, and especially when we are in an enhanced level of awareness, that process is spot on. The monologue that we are having is picking up that information from the environment, and we are realizing, or we realize, it is because of ABCD that the person is having this reaction. So it is very spot on, and we can confirm it. We can, talk to them. We can ask them, is it because of this? And, depending on where we are, depending on what it is, right? So yes, the level of perception is enhanced. One thing that sometimes, just to start a little bit at least, this idea, not to leave it so abstract, but more grabbable, more specific. An idea that I many times give is the idea of colors, right? How, inside the body we are, very, well, first of all, color is a frequency of light, and then we're used to a certain range of colors. But you leave the body, you're able to see other colors, and even, I don't know if to say other colors, because sometimes it would seem as if certain colors are in between the colors that we see here in the physical reality. You understand what I mean? Meaning,
Yes.
it's almost like we have more sensitivity,
Yeah.
more granularity, and then now it's a different tonality of color, but our physical eye is not able to catch. But outside the body, you're able to catch it.
Right.
Yeah. And I many times give colors as an example because we're very visual, as physical beings. But the same thing happens with the sense of smell, with the sense of taste, with the sense of hearing. And then it starts to happen with other things that I don't even know if I would classify them as senses. But for example, just the degree of understanding of concepts. Like, for example, time. We have even already thinking about time here in the physical reality is complex. It sometimes makes a knot in our head, and what is time? But as you start having out-of-body experiences and you start experiencing realities or dimensions that have a different concept of time, your concept of time also starts becoming more refined. And you start understanding that, first of all, part of it can be very subjective. And we already realize that inside the body. Sometimes we are in a very engaging conversation, or we are watching a really good film or a really good movie, and it seems that it goes by very quickly. Obviously, it took the time that it took, but for us, it already feels that it went by very quickly. And sometimes we are, I don't know, in a conversation that is not as engaging, and really it only lasted 10 minutes, but it feels like it dragged, forever. So that effect is much more enhanced outside the body. First of all, so that's the subjective part. But also the part that is external to you in terms of time is, that in different realities, time just simply has a different meaning. So sometimes you are outside the body and you feel that you were out, you did things, or you experienced, events that would amount normally here in the physical reality to, let's say, 6 hours. But you come back and you realize that on your clock on the night table. I don't know if anybody has clocks in their night tables anymore, but here physically, only 15 minutes went by. But you perceived events that would be worth 6 hours. So you realize there isn't a one-to-one relationship, but time over there is more dilated. It allows you to experience more in less time, etc. So just your concept evolves of time and of other things, of course, ethics, spirituality, understanding of other beings, understanding of ourselves, etc.
Oh, that's a juicy answer. There's so much there. Yeah, a lot to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and just to maybe because I know we can go in a lot of different directions, but just to mention the obvious, and maybe it's already on people's mind, just the idea of who we are and of ourselves, right, becomes magnified the moment that you have other experiences. So especially with out-of-body experiences. So you know how sometimes we have, for example, been living in our country, in our culture, and that's great and excellent. We love our food. We love, that we know where everything is at, etc. But the moment that you travel to a very different place, let's say you go to Japan, you go to, I don't know, South Africa, Indonesia, or Germany, a very different language, or Turkey. Yeah, that experience helps you to see the context where you have grown up differently. Sometimes you appreciate it even more, but now you're able to see more nuances and understand a little bit better who you are because you can compare yourself from that other perspective. And that's just in the physical reality. So the moment that we have the OBEs, The same thing happens when we are in different realities, but at the same time, the some of the questions that many times come at the beginning is you realize, okay, I have my physical body, I have my physical life, my physical education, my physical culture. But here I am realizing that I am much more than that, much more than, in my case, right, simply Luis Minero. So what am I beyond that? And the out-of-body experience allows you to have the comparison that I was talking with regards to, going to Turkey or something, but also it allows you to explore much further really who you are. And that also enhances your understanding, right, of yourself, of life.
Yeah, yeah. The horizons of the mind expand and open.
Expand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the implication here, right, is that there it seems as though there is some part or essence or quality to who and what we are that is capable of existing independently of the physical body, or that can separate from the physical body. Would you say that it's true that there's something that actually leaves the physical body? I don't know if that word is exactly correct, but just trying
Yeah.
to put this in English in words, would you say that it's true that there's something that actually sort of leaves? And well, in your perspective, what does this reveal about the nature of mind and consciousness?
Yes. So first of all, yes, I would say, because we can use the word leave, I would say yes, there is something that leaves, even if we sort of like playing a little bit of devil's advocate, right? Even if we are more philosophically inclined and we say it's just our focus that, you know, uh, sort of like stops uh, putting its attention into this reality and now it's putting the attention somewhere else. Now the focus sort of like has left this area of activity and now it's going further out there, whether in terms of distance or whether in terms of realities, right? So it left this area of activity and the area of activity just simply, expanded as well. So I would say something leaves. Um, and yeah, for sure. The nature of what we are becomes more expanded as well. Just the simple fact that we realize we are not just a product of this life. We are not just, what my five senses have perceived, but I can learn and, understand and grow beyond the physical body. And furthermore, I also realized that because this essence is somehow independent of the physical body, I also realize it continues existing after the physical body disappears, and it existed before the physical body was created. So even some of the things that maybe some of the older philosophies have been, writing about and we have read about, some of those things with the out-of-body experience, I wouldn't say everything, but many of those ideas become more palpable for us with the out-of-body experiences. We can actually become an explorer and we can, sort of like take on that task of, okay, let me try to figure out which things of these older philosophies make sense, which ones maybe don't, which ones maybe make sense and I can understand why they were saying that based on the level of knowledge that they had 3,000 years ago. Now that we are able to pull from so many different areas, maybe we can reinterpret what we are perceiving and, get to an even deeper conclusion. So
Mm-hmm.
that is also an advantage, of the education that we have had.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and I love how the exploration becomes experiential there rather than just cognitive or conceptual.
Exactly.
And yeah, and so what I hear you saying is that there's some aspect to consciousness or the nature of self or true self, or uh, soul or spirit or chi or life force or whatever we want to call it, that is not produced or generated by the brain, but that exists more fundamentally. That maybe the brain is a receiver or antenna of this more fundamental life force that can exist, that can and does exist independently. And as you said, this connects
Yeah,
to, it seems to connect to, ancient mystical and shamanic teachings from all over the world and all throughout history, teachings of the soul, or sort of like the subtle body, the astral body. Um, well, is it true that, ancient cultures all around the world have been speaking about these out of body experiences for a long time? And do you see kind of your present experiences connecting to these ancient teachings about the soul or spirit?
sure, sure. Yes, absolutely. And part of the reason why they have been talking, many, schools of thought have spoken about this throughout the centuries, is because it is an experiential thing, right? So if somebody in whichever part of the world had an involuntary out-of-body experience, they would it would change them, and now they would come back and talk to the tribe, to the group, to the society where they lived, and they would try to make sense of it. Of course, sometimes those paranormal phenomena, which because it wasn't only out-of-body experience, but sometimes clairvoyances or other things that people had, were the beginnings of some of or were incorporated in some of the religions and some of the schools of thought that have existed for a while. But yes, they many of them certainly had that the ability or experience, part of the non-physical realities, and then they interpreted as best as they could, and that gave rise to many of these ideologies that have stood to a certain extent the test of time, right?
Hmm.
So yes, it is something, or at least we try to make it and go about it in a more experiential fashion than just simply an abstract philosophical, make sense only type of a perspective.
Hmm. Hmm. It strikes me that having one of these experiences uh, is fundamentally transformative in nature. Having this experience, and then of existing kind of outside of the body, having perceptions and insights and awareness in that state, and then coming back and kind of integrating or assimilating that, strikes me as a fundamentally transformative, almost evolutionary process. I'm wondering if you'd be open to um, sharing maybe an example of an out of body experience that you've had that felt transformative in nature.
Yeah, and certainly having one can transform you, can change you for sure. But I would say what happens more common is that having a few tends to transform you. Having a series, a set. I just say this because sometimes on the first or with a few or so, the beginning, there's a little bit more of surprise and shock, from the person than fully taking deep advantage of things that can happen. But with time, certainly you start to gain a little bit more knowledge, perspective, guidance. For example, one of the things, talking about myself, and this is why I say it's not just one, but it's a series of them that have led me to do and to try to implement in my life, is the idea of trying to help with the information of having out of body experiences, and with helping just in general, energetically, however I can. So not just the teaching of the out of body experience, but beyond that. For example, in our site, we have a form that is really open for anybody who thinks or who knows anybody who might need energetic assistance. So you can just simply go in, put in, my nephew is going through this problem, or my daughter is having this problem with her husband, blah, 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 blah. They put a certain amount of information, and us, we try to dedicate some time every day, several of us, in our organization, to just simply try to direct the best of energies to try to help with that problem.
Mm.
So it's a certain dedication. I don't want to make it sound, that it's more than what it is. But the fact that, after many years we keep on doing it is because we see the value in that, and we see that, there is much more to the life of people than just simply what meets the eye, what that meets the physical eye specifically. But there are energetic influences, and they can be very positive. They can be, very useful, very assistential. And just simply a lot of my experiences, have always or have allowed me to arrive at the conclusion that, I want to open up space in my physical day to do that for other people. So it's not about money. It's not about, recognition. I actually, it's interesting that you asked me this, because I hardly ever talk about this, but at the same time, it's good to talk about it because it is already on our website. It's there. Anybody can go, and people do go, and they request information. And by the way, we are not the only ones that do this, or I am not the only one. Many people throughout the world do it. So we, going back a little bit to some of the things that we have mentioned, it is, the understanding of the value that helping others has, the value that of being constructive, of being, trying to really lend a hand to somebody else, doesn't really matter who it is. This I see as something, that certainly I have learned quite a bit, because I wasn't like this, when I was a teenager in my 20s. I was a little bit more like, what's in it for me? I guess. And then this is something that I have understood little by little, with life experience, but obviously including there heavily the out-of-body experiences.
Yeah. Well, just kind of living in a world where the sort of existing scientific consensus is to really dismiss or reject or even pathologize these experiences. Yeah. I'm wondering to what extent it feels like important to your work to provide further scientific credibility to these experiences, as well as just a curiosity as to what kind of data and scientific research exists on this topic thus far.
Yeah. And I think that, at different moments of my life, I have put a little bit more emphasis on maybe the research aspect and the research in the scientific sense, the hard science type of sense. And in other moments, I have put a little less emphasis on that, just because it is a little bit of a double-edged sword. As you say, the scientific consensus, is a little bit more dismissive, of these types of experiences, right? This is not to say that there aren't very serious and good scientists, colleagues, friends that I know, some of them fairly well, who are doing very good work, with regards to putting data and statistics, pulling from statistics and, from different type of laboratory experiments, evidence to, show not just the out-of-body experiences, but also many other paranormal phenomena, how they work, and, how there is evidence that shows that that something is happening beyond, just simply the physical reality. So my hat off to them for sure. I again, from time to time, I join a little bit more. From time to time, I'm a little bit more focused on maybe the more practical aspects, right? So at this moment, I have been more involved in other projects, but especially in the past, I have performed surveys on the types of experiences that people have, on the type of benefits that they describe, on what are the health effects of the type of or the health effects from their out-of-body experiences in their life. And part of the reason why I think that I did that was because I was trying to bridge a little bit, the subjective with the objective. So people have these experiences and they have certain effects. And if they are not recorded and, a proper survey performed, then they just stay with them. And because it's how could I say, a minority of the population, they stay sort of like isolated, and that information just simply, it's never, incorporated. So by doing the proper, compilation of that information and seeing actually what are the effects and what is happening, you start to make it a little bit more, you start to give it a little bit more of an objective, you know, uh, coloring to it, if we can say this. So those were some of the projects I was involved in.
Hmm.
I have a couple of others in the pipeline, but let me not talk about them because they'll probably be coming up next year or 2 years. And there are other researchers who would prefer, to be them the ones that probably release that information. So yeah.
I'm curious about the idea of veridical out of body experiences. You
Yes.
know, in the of course in the field of research into near death experiences, there are these extraordinary accounts of people having an out of body experience, kind of at the threshold or beyond the threshold of physical bodily death, floating out of the body, and then having perceptions about their environment, either locally or at a distance, that can then be independently verified and are true during a time when a person is unconscious or clinically dead, right?
Right.
And to me, that's incredibly forceful, compelling,
Yes.
amazing evidence that there is something going on here. To your knowledge, to what extent is there this quality of veridical perceptions in out of body experiences independently of the near death state?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can certainly have, those experiences. And I would say at the beginning, this is or people are looking quite a bit for that type of evidence, so that it's going to help them, to sort of like to prove to themselves, at least at the beginning, that they are having a real experience and it's not just a different kind of dream, right? And even though most people, even when they sort of like conclude that it's an out of body experience through a veridical observation, they already know. It's just that they want still to have, some type of observation that they can then confirm, right? And I say they already know because their level of awareness already tells them that, they are having a real experience, right? Like right now, we know that we are engaged in this activity right now, and any viewer that watches us afterwards, when they are watching us, they know that they are watching us. They are aware. So, they don't need to pinch themselves. They don't need to, slap themselves to know that they are aware. So usually people already know. But yes, I think it's the trying to confirm the OBE is a very worthy thing. And people usually have some perceptions that confirm to them their out of body experiences. And it can be, usually they are random things. The things that they were not expecting are the ones that confirms it to them. So, for example, they go to bed and their spouse leaves, a cup of tea on the counter of the kitchen, something that they rarely do or they were not expecting to do, or they usually leave them in the counter of the kitchen, but on this evening they actually left them by the TV. And you know, just because they forgot. Now, the person has the out of body experience, goes and, sees that, right? And then in the morning, they can confirm it. Or even if they never see the cup of tea, they can go and ask their spouse, the next morning, did you by any chance leave the cup of tea by the TV? And, that way they can confirm it. So and they realize, yes, so I had a real perception, of course. Now, having said that, even though we can perceive the physical reality, I would say, even then, it is interesting to see that when we are in an out-of-body experiences, the senses of the non-physical body are more tuned for the non-physical reality. And then sometimes we have certain problems, seeing things in the physical reality. So I say this
Hmm.
because when we are observing the physical reality, it doesn't look exactly the way we see it right now with our physical eyes. Even not just the issue of colors, but sometimes, the sizes. For example, this is something that most people are going to realize once they have OBEs. Sometimes they are in a specific room, like their living room, and their living room feels, for example, bigger than how they know it is in the physical reality. Sometimes if it is a room in which you spend a lot of time and the family is always there, the kids are doing homework there, or playing, and a lot of energy is manifested, is produced in that room. The room somehow in the non-physical reality really is a little bit bigger or seems a little bit bigger because it has like more information or more events imprinted in that environment. And then normally, if you go to a room that is hardly ever used, sometimes it can look a little bit smaller.
Mm.
So just the issue of dimension can vary quite a bit. Another thing where sometimes we have problems, and anybody maybe that is watching us afterwards that has ever tried it will will confirm it, is trying to read outside the body, trying to actually see characters. It's almost as if, meaning our vision is, if you have a good level of awareness, your vision is clear. But what happens when you go to try to read is almost as if the non-physical vision is so sharp, so detailed, that it's almost as if instead of seeing the contrast between black and white to read the character, it's almost as if you get inside the atoms of black or that are forming the character, and then it takes you a little bit to sort of like measure at which distance you're supposed to see, to sort of like see the entire figure. And sometimes it takes you 30 seconds, a minute, to just make out one character. So it just because it's a different type of vision. I many times say that this is probably the reason why we have a physical body. And this is going to, I'm going to state the obvious, but I think it's good for us to think like this. I say, look, if we want to do something inside the body or read something physically, we have a perfect body for that. Just let's get inside the body and let's read. But the moment that we want to do something non-physical, we also have a perfect body for that. So we leave the body and we use the other one, of course. So, but they both have problems interacting with the reality for which they're not made.
As you reflect back, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, and I've heard you mention kind of hundreds of these out of body experiences. Is there any experience that kind of sticks out in your mind as one of the most memorable?
There are many. There are many. Um, ex- e- Again, going back to the idea of assistance, first of all, experiences in which I was maybe helping other people, or what sometimes other people like to describe, helping others go into the light so that they don't get lost. I don't know if that expression makes sense. Let me maybe explain it. Sometimes when people pass away, they might be confused by the passing away. They might be confused for many reasons. Sometimes simply because they are still existing, and maybe the person during their entire life thought that the moment that they passed away, they were just going to see pitch black, and that is not happening. Just that can already confuse them. Other people become confused simply because maybe they had a certain trauma from the physical life that went unresolved, and then they are still focused on that. But now they are in a different condition, right? It's not so easy to, how could I say, to fix it or to even talk to the person, or, to try to make amends because of that. Um, so there are many reasons why people can become confused once they pass away. Sometimes it's just simply the shock of it being so fast, a car accident or something like that. 1 second you're driving, the other moment you are outside the body already, looking at the scene, and that just simply is shocking, is surprising. So sometimes because of that, people can stay confused, um, sort of like in a dimension, either in the physical reality or in a dimension that is not as healthy for them, because it's a dimension where there is more confusion. Since they are confused, like attracts like, and they stay sort of like stuck in a frequency of an energy field that has more confusion. And then it is just simply not evolutionary nor not spiritually healthy, etc. Really, depending on where they are, there are so many cases as there are people. So sometimes, we try to help them, and not just me, many other people, in all corners of the world, try to help them to sort of like disconnect from that reality and really try to sort of like show them a little bit the way of where they maybe should be. And most of the times, I have to say, we don't know where they should be. But there are their spirit guides or these beings of light, masters, evolved beings that usually, once they have been disconnected from that reality of confusion, so to speak, you just simply hand them off to them, and they are going to take them, to a better place where they're going to be able to, move on, reassess their lives, prepare, maybe other experiences that they might want to have in order to keep on developing and maturing spiritually and growing. So some of those experiences leave leave impact you, because many times as you are helping some of those individuals, you connect energetically so much with them that you are sort of like inside their memories, inside their what they are, and they are inside of you, by the way. But what happens is that since you have a little bit more awareness, they are a little bit more confused. You understand their context, their situation much better. And sometimes, for example, you feel things that at least I don't remember having been in those situations or having felt that. Like, for example, there are sometimes some people are suffering, let's say, from loneliness, a very deep loneliness. Me in my life, I really haven't felt felt it to that degree, I should say, or have had problems with that. But sometimes when you connect to them, you feel that emptiness and that craving for trying to get out of it, and how they are internally struggling to try to find a way, a path forward, an avenue to get out of it, and they're not able to. That leaves a mark. That also makes you try to be a little bit more understanding of others, of people, especially after you have seen a few different cases from different things that could be a little bit deeper. It just simply changes you how you see people, I would say. Taking away sort of like the physical body and seeing more, what are their struggles, understanding what are their hopes, what are their dreams, what is it that they're trying to strive for, what is it that internally they think they should fix in order to be accepted by others. And I say they think that because many times many people overvalue those things, and they don't really need to fix that much. It's more about us enjoying the journey of developing and of growing than really fixing something because of some physical standard, so to speak. Yeah. Do I make my, am I, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I hear this expanded quality of empathy and connection, and I think this stands as a really significant example as to how having an out of body experience in a very kind of real pragmatic sense can help us exist
Yeah.
with more wellness and with more kindness and awareness in our lives.
Yeah. And by the way, interesting that you brought up also the near-death experiences a moment ago, because this same effect also happens with people that have near-death experiences. They usually
Right.
become much more humane, much more
Yeah.
understanding. They realize it's not about, I don't know, the bank account, or, sometimes you see on TV, right, the list of the 100 richest person, which really doesn't really mean much once you leave the body. It's something completely different. But you see, right, how our society, Western culture, pushes us into a little bit more the things that we can touch.
Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated by what you've just shared there. It's almost like facilitating this almost a lost soul into, out of the physical reality into whatever lies beyond. And this connection between the out of body experience and life after death, or the afterlife, or the existence of alternate planes and realms and dimensions of existence. What do you think that the out of body experience has to reveal about the existence of these alternate planes or realms of existence, or even the afterlife?
Yeah, absolutely. So you leave the body, and at the beginning you are close or probably around the places that you know. So your house, your work, etc., or in the equivalent of your house, your work, etc. But yeah, little by little, you start to go into different realities and dimensions. Sometimes when you least expect it, it's just because a dimension or another reality or plane of existence, it's not necessarily a place, so to speak, with an address, like in a or it's not an issue of being higher, like if I go 100 feet in the air, now I am in another dimension. It doesn't have a physical vector, so to speak, but it's a different and really the word doesn't really also do justice, but it's a different frequency. It's a different frequency of thought. This is what it is, a different frequency of energetic information. So sometimes, and in the
Mm,
practice, in the out of body experience, when people bump into other realities, it's the moment when they change context. Sometimes the changing of the context makes you change dimension because you change a little bit the frequency of your thought. So you are, for example, in your house, and you think, I'm going to go through the window, and now I'm going to be seeing the parking lot. But the moment that you go through the window, that change in location and in context makes you just simply think about something else. And all of a sudden, when you are on the other side of the window, it's no longer the parking lot. You are in a completely different reality. There can be a lake, there can be mountains, it can be a completely different reality. So at the beginning, I would say people bump into other dimensions, and by accident, sort of like bump, when they are changing their location, their context, so to speak. They open a door, and they just simply go through it, and now they're in a different reality. Um, and then, yes, you realize that there are many different types of frequencies and of realities, outside the body. Obviously, once you have been to a few, you already have the memory of them, the reference of them, and then you can go visit them again without going through the window. Because the way you go to different places outside the body is by putting your focus on something that you know. The same thing, so by putting your focus on the target. So if right now you leave the body and you want to go visit, let's say, your brother that is in college. I don't know if you have a brother in college, but let's say that your brother is in college. And then you are outside your body. You focus on your brother, you certainly know him. He must be in the physics class, whatever. So your non-physical body travels to that location, and you can be seeing your brother in the physics class. But once you have already experienced a dimension, you can do exactly the same thing, now not with your brother, but with that other dimension. So yes, that reality that I was already there, that had the mountains, that felt like this, and then you travel to that dimension. And now it doesn't happen randomly, but you little by little start being able to go to different places that you have already been, and you can already then start to understand a little bit the fact that there are different realities and or planes of existence. Maybe planes of existence is a better expression. Some of them are somewhat similar to the physical reality. They look a little bit similar to the physical reality, but others are not. Others start to have less objects, less concepts, like the concept of time that I was mentioning. Some of them have a very different concept of time. So they can start to look very different from the physical reality. Some of them can look very organized, very clean, almost like and that's when people say, look, I was at a heavenly place. And they can even start to become more abstract in the sense that you only see, meaning the visual impression is you only see shape and outlines. And sort of like there is no room or ground or roof, but it's just an open sea of sort of like as if you're floating in colors, so to speak, and everybody is sort of like an outline. So many times people describe this as more heavenly places, of course. And not only that, you feel from these realities and from these energetic realities, a level of organization, of stability. For what I mean by that is, when sometimes in the big cities, in our big cities, there are certain neighborhoods that are a little rough. And when you, for some reason, happen to be in those neighborhoods, even though maybe they are empty, you don't feel safe. You feel like, something might happen at any moment. So that is not the feeling that you have when you are in those realities. You feel the opposite. You feel, sometimes you feel that you belong. Sometimes you feel, I don't belong, but I am so accepted here. I am so welcome here. Here, nobody is going to think about doing anything to me. On the contrary, they're going to see how you sometimes feel protected, you feel embraced, even though nobody is really embracing you, but the energetic environment is already supportive, so to speak. So,
yeah.
So these are many elements, I guess, that can change, with regards to different dimensions.
Is it your opinion that non-ordinary out-of-body experiences could be used as a way to almost map out or establish some kind of cartography of these other planes and realms and non-physical entities in some sense?
Yeah. I would say you can use it for that, and to a certain extent, most people that dedicate themselves to have out-of-body experiences spontaneously are already doing that, if not fully intentionally, because naturally you want to try to find your bearings, in this sea of dimensions. And when I say sea of dimensions, it's because they really are many, even beginning with that, right? And maybe that is part of what we like to think with our physical brain, right? And maybe if with our physical brain, for example, we want to know how many are there, and we think like that physically, and we want to try to classify them because we're used to this type of parameters. What are the levels? How many are there? And once you leave the body, it's not that you cannot have an answer to those things. It's just that you realize that having that answer is very complex. So it's very hard to really know how many. So sometimes we look a little bit like maybe somebody from 2,000 years ago trying to say or trying to have an estimate of how many stars there are in the galaxy. So sure, you can see them and you can start to map them, and it'll be helpful as you build, as the further or the the maps that are going to come next use this initial map to rely on, right? So it'll be a first step and then a second step and then a third step. So I would say most people that are having out-of-body experiences have their idea of how they organize. I wish there was more consensus on how this map work. What I mean to say is, talking to some colleagues and really reading also books by other people that I unfortunately don't know, you realize that the descriptions vary tremendously from the maybe more literary and romantic and really beautiful. For example, there are some philosophies and some people who say, look, it's like a field of roses, and there are as many dimensions as petals in that field of roses. I usually don't describe it so well or so beautifully or so romantically, but it already gives you an idea of the amount of realities and of dimensions. Even certain authors, they say, in order to go back to a certain dimension, think about the petal of that rose that you already went into, which to me at least is a way of thinking that doesn't, that it's not my way of thinking. Really, this is what I want to mention. But if it works for them, all the better for it. I can only take my hat off to them. The amount of descriptions varies. Some people sometimes they rely on the classic numbers, 3 levels: the lower, the middle, and the higher, or 7 or 11. The sort of like magic classic numbers of the physical reality and of many ideologies. So it really varies how you classify them. And there are just simply many. Hundreds, thousands of them, honestly, that you can see. And the one thing that I can say about them is they don't differentiate each other because of distance or because of any, at least based on my experience, they don't differentiate because of any physical parameter. It's not distance, it's not frequency, it's not the amplitude of the wave, it's not any chemical element that exists or doesn't exist. It's not in the colors, it is really in the energetic content, in the vibe, in the quality of manifestation of the beings that are in that dimension. If that makes sense, I hope that doesn't leave it too abstract, meaning it's being differentiated by the level of the intention of different beings. So if a group of beings has a certain level of intention that is similar, they usually end up forming a reality of a certain degree. But if the other ones have a better level of intention or a different level of intention, let me not even say better, a different level of intention, now there is another reality. And if another group has another one, then there is another one. So there are many. Obviously, yes, some are just simply different, meaning sort of like in a more horizontal fashion, and others are just simply more refined. When people talk about the spirit guides or beings of light, you realize that their intention, perspectives, manifestations are just, well, let me not put you in this bag, but I realize that they are much more refined than what I am in terms of intention. And they just simply, their normal for them is a reality that is much more developed and above than, my normal dimension, so to speak. Yeah. And that's where the struggle comes. We all try to refine a little bit more ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it strikes me the out-of-body experience is an amazingly powerful way to refine, to polish the gem in a sense.
Yeah.
And what you're speaking to, it strikes me as almost like these entire ecologies of like invisible biospheres of just an unbelievable amount of diversity of and
Yeah.
maybe an infinite number of realms and dimensions and planes inhabited by an unending variety of different types of beings, and such a powerful and compelling idea, to put it lightly. I mean, more revolutionary than the Copernican revolution, like the
Yeah,
next kind of leap in our paradigm of our collective understanding as to the nature of reality and our place in the greater cosmos.
yeah, yeah. I think so too. This is why, I think that people developing their own ability to have OBEs, I think is so important because it becomes a little bit almost like the difference of in terms of knowledge, right? Obviously, but in terms of knowledge of somebody that learned how to read and went through, normal education and now has a certain level of knowledge, and somebody who maybe didn't have the ability to even learn how to read and just everything is Chinese. Not everything, but a lot of things are unknown to them. So even their perspective and the way of understanding things are going to be very different. So there is that quantum leap, and that's why I think that the more people can have the OBEs and experience it by themselves, the better for them, of course, and eventually the better for society as well.
Yes, yes, yes. You've spent many years now, it seems to me, being very generously giving of your time and energy towards helping other people learn how to either involuntarily or voluntarily have these out of body experiences. And well, I'm curious if you'd be able to share just a little bit as to what that entails and how you approach kind of teaching or training people to develop this capacity of out of body experiences.
Yeah, yeah, sure, of course, of course. Yeah, the the I guess the approach that usually I take and we take with my colleagues at Mosaic is we try to help them to develop their own sort of like their own skills, their own ability to induce them. More or less, like we were saying, learning how to read, now that we learn how to read, we just simply grab the book and we can do it, right? We need just simply a little bit of light, maybe in the case of reading, but that's it. So in terms of having OBEs, maybe some of the best approaches are, first of all, trying to get a hold of or to control or to put in better shape our own energetic system. So what is called the energetic body or the etheric body that we all have. This is the body that tends to have the energy centers or the chakras that also have been known by many Eastern philosophies for centuries, right? And they are the ones that certain philosophies, like for example, acupressure and acupuncture, and several of those philosophies, they work on those, energetic points or energetic centers. Now, so what we want to do, first of all, is we want to have that energetic system flexible, loose, in good shape, because in essence, it is the splitting or that energetic system that is going to allow you to disconnect from the body. So if that energetic system is a little bit more rigid or more stuck, then it's a little bit harder to disconnect. And the reason why sometimes it is stuck is just simply lack of use. It's no fault of anybody. It's just simply our classic Western education. There are other cultures, that emphasize a little bit more that aspect, and then those individuals tend to have an energetic system that is a little bit looser, a little bit more flexible. So just like, we maybe are at work or something, and, you hear a coworker saying, oh man, I have to start going to the gym. And we worry about that because we know that it's good for our health. The moment that we start to understand a little bit more about the energetic system, hopefully we're going to start to see people that are going to say, oh man, I should go to work with energies, to
Yeah.
exercise my energetic system. Because it is, first of all, beyond the out-of-body experience, it's also an aspect that can help us a lot for our just overall health, the health of our physical body. The person's going to feel just so much, much better, and sometimes is going to recover much faster for illnesses or just not have them at all. So, but when the energetic system is looser, is more flexible, or it is easier to have OBEs. Let me conclude that phrase. But the way to do it is, first of all, just simplifying things a little bit. The ideal would be to go into a room, or to be in a condition, in a place where you're going to be undisturbed, almost as if you were going to do a meditation. And then just putting the attention on you. You want to start moving your energies in different directions, in different directions, so as to start to control them every time better. More or less, imagine that this would be more or less the same thing that we would do with our physical body if we had never moved it, and now we want to start to recover our muscles, after 20 years. So we would start trying to move our leg, and trying to move our arm, and trying to move our fingers and our neck, so as to start to move, little by little, to recover the ability to move and to flexibilize the muscles so that they, can perform. So with the energetic body, you go there, you can either sit or lie down. Maybe at the beginning, those are the best two positions, just so that you are supported, really, at rest. And then you can start to focus on your own energetic system and move the energies. For example, you can start to think about sending the energies outward and doing it sort of like in pulses or in waves. And at the beginning, maybe the first few times, we might not feel much, but I would venture to say that most people, when they start trying to just simply, for example, send energies out, they already start to feel some tingling on their hands, or something warm around the top of the head, or their forehead, or in different areas of the body. These are not the only two sensations, and these are not the only areas where we might feel them. But little by little, you start to realize that there is a substance that is actually being emanated every time you are thinking about sending the energies out. So what that means is, you start little by little with practice to control better, sort of like your energetic muscles, if you will, right? You can do the same type of exercise, but in reverse. So trying to bring energies in, almost like the energies around you, to bring them in. And you're going to start to feel, sensations as they come into your body. And you can do this throughout your entire body, of course. Like, for example, you can focus just on sending energies out of your hand, just out of my hand, out of my hand, out of my hand. Great. But you can also focus on doing it throughout your entire body, like throughout your entire skin, and also bringing it in, like throughout your entire body and throughout your entire skin. And you can do other things, of course. You can just simply work on one energy center, like only send energies, for example, through the top of the head, or through the chest, or one that is certainly a very good exercise, because it can induce the vibrations that you were mentioning at the beginning, which can be the precursor to an out-of-body experience. And really, this can even become a technique to have out-of-body experiences in and of itself, is to start to move the energies inside your body from your head down to your feet, feeling it running the length of your body to your head, feeling it running the length of your body to your feet, and then to your head, and then to your feet. And probably it won't happen the first few times, but you little by little are going to get the handle of the flow, the vertical flow through your body. And then you start sort of like increasing that flow, maybe the speed a little bit, or the amount. And once you become a little bit better at it, you're going to start to feel this vibration that you were describing. Spontaneously, I think I have felt the vibration before leaving the body just a few times in my life, spontaneously. But with this vertical flow, I am able to induce it, basically at will. The vibration is something that takes me just a minute or so, and I am already feeling the vibration. Physically, if somebody were to watch me do it, my physical body is completely relaxed. I am almost asleep. The same way as when somebody is in a meditation, their physical body is not moving. It's just simply nothing that exciting happening in the physical body, but you are feeling energetically the vibrations, almost like you have an earthquake inside, and there is a lot of activity in you, like a buzzing, and you feel many times very alive during the vibrational state. Uh, and if you are able to induce a strong enough vibratory condition, the non-physical body, the astral body, basically pops outside the body. Sometimes it comes also with these sounds around the head. You feel like a clack, clack, crack, and you are out. So, and this is a process. This takes time, and if I can say something very useful to all the viewers, at the beginning we were talking about the difference between having the information and doing things more experientially, right? The key to having out-of-body experiences is in the repetition, in the practice, in the experience. So we can know about it. We can, somebody can explain it to us. We can go through reading the book and rereading the book, and now we know it. We know it back and forth. We have memorized it. But it's not about that. It's really about the repetition, almost like going to the gym. We can read all the manuals of all the machines at the gym and everything. We know how to use them very well. That is not going to help. We actually have to go there day by day by day. I wish there was an app where we could just simply press a button and voila, vibrational state. Or voila, I lose weight. I wish there was such an app. But really is, the old-fashioned repetition and constancy that makes you better. And which is obviously something that we have already used in many other areas of our life, right? We used it for going to school, we used it for learning how to read, we used it for learning how to swim, etc. So now it's just a matter of applying it into our own energetic system, so as to disconnect, so as to have OBEs. So ideally is working with energies and then using a technique for leaving the body, which can be also the energy work. But sometimes people work with energies for, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, they leave them loose, and then they switch into other techniques for leaving the body that also are based on concentration, on will, in essence. And they can range from techniques dealing with breathing, techniques dealing with imagination, techniques concentrating on a sequence of events, or repeating affirmations, or just as simply as repeating your intention of wanting to go to a specific place. For example, let's say that there is a place, let's say that you went to Hawaii as a graduation gift from high school, and you loved it. You remember that beach so well. You wish you could go there again. There is already even sort of like an emotional link, to that, of you with that beach. So great. Now you can work with energies 10, 15 minutes and just simply lie down, relax, and start thinking, I want to go to that beach. I want to go to that beach. And you see it in your mind's eye, you visualize it, you imagine it. Not that it will happen the first time. It could. And if it did, it wouldn't be the first time. But to be fair, it normally takes a few weeks of loosening up the energy and of wanting to go to that target until the person, disconnects and has an OBE. I would say, really, when I say a few weeks, I mean a couple of months, on average, maybe 2-3 months, something like that. Some people, like everything in life, some people start to play the piano faster, others take a lot longer, and others, they never learn. I really didn't practice enough. I should have. So I don't know how to play the piano, but some people pick it up fairly quick. The same thing happens with the OBEs. Some people are a little bit more predisposed and they get it a little bit faster, but I would say average a few months, and we start having them. Maybe to give something else that might be in line with that would be if we are a normal, I don't know, 30-year-old in normal shape, and we all of a sudden say, look, I want to run a marathon. Probably won't happen the first day, probably won't happen the second day. But, after a few months of training and building up to it, there's no reason why, a normal, healthy 30-year-old shouldn't be able to run a marathon, right? So that just to give an example, right? I know that, with examples, there's the risk that it gives the idea, a certain idea more clearly, but at the same time, it misleads on other things. Some people who maybe are 60 are going to think, oh, I'm never going to run a marathon, so I'm never going to be able to leave the body. No, don't associate things. So it was just an example to give an idea. Leaving the body can happen. So obviously running a marathon is very dependent also on the age. If we are 80, it might not take 2 or 3 months. It might actually never happen again, ever. And if we are 15, it might be, a little bit easier, maybe. But that's because the example that I'm giving is very tied to physical age. But with out-of-body experiences, almost at any age, age doesn't matter. That is really not a factor necessarily. On the contrary, I would say maybe spontaneously, people who are younger, maybe 20 and below, 22 and below, and people who are older, maybe 60 and 65 and above, tend to be more predisposed. But I don't think that has anything to do with age. I think it has to do with the rhythm of life. Between 22 and 65, we are so focused on what we want to accomplish physically that there tends to be less time for non-physical things. If that makes any sense. So
Absolutely.
Once we retire, it becomes easier. And before 22, 20, 18, people tend to have a little bit of an easier time, generally speaking. But if we practice, people get to it. People are able to develop it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and for anyone who's interested in this, I can't highly recommend enough Lewis's book, Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience, because it is just such an incredible wealth of insights into the out-of-body experience, as well as the cosmological implications of this, but as well, it's really in a kind of pragmatic, practical sense, offering a lot of information as to how to explore and tap into these experiences for ourselves. It's hard to put into words for me, really, the significance and the implications of this experience on a personal level, moving towards empowerment and evolution and self-actualization. And then on a global level, we need awakening, we need spiritual transformation, we need people to expand as individuals and as a collective. And your work is making a really significant contribution to that. So thank you once again for taking the time to be here and share.
My pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you. Keep up the good work.